Hi there, and welcome to the C10 podcast, where we mainly talk about leadership and mentoring in 10 questions with changemakers, mostly with ties to the Kansas City area. This is all part of the C of the Major Leagues Foundation, and specifically a tie-in to our C10 mentoring and leadership program. I'm Matt Folks, Executive Director of C of the Major Leagues, and usual host of this podcast. I'm honored that you've chosen to listen this week. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into this week's conversation. This is episode 147 of the C10 podcast, and we're going to be chatting with Matt Dimmick, who went from Shawnee Mission South High School in the late 1980s to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point to leading in various capacities during an incredible career in the Army, including time in the White House, to now working with a nonprofit that has him working often in Ukraine. As you'll hear, this is a C10 conversation that was more than 2 years in the making, if you will. This interview with Matt Dimmick was recorded on February 15th in front of our students and mentors at Music Theater Heritage inside Crown Center here in Kansas City. As is typically the case with these interviews in front of our C10 students and mentors, we've removed their questions at the end. Except in this case, for one. All the questions and answers were excellent, as they usually are, but there was one in particular that stood out to me and others in attendance that night. Here's part of that answer.
Bad leaders can disguise themselves as high-performing individuals who are driving high-performing teams, when in effect, some of them are absolutely toxic and are eroding the team. They're riding a team to exhaustion, reaping the benefits of the output, but morale, mood, attitude within that team is absolutely rock bottom.
When we get to that question toward the end of the episode, I'll come back on here and tee it up for Matt. Hey, speaking of teeing it up, that's a bad segue, isn't it? Our third annual See You at Top Golf event is in about 3 months on Thursday night, May 23rd at Top Golf in Overland Park. If you'd like to support students and have a blast with friends, coworkers, families, or just some random folks you invite, please visit seeyouattopgolf.com for more details. That's the letter C, youattopgolf.com. Now it's time for this week's episode. This was a really fun interview that we're going to pick up right now with me introducing Matt Dimmick that night. I hope you enjoy it. I have known tonight's guest since high school, since he first moved to Kansas City. It's one of those things we lost touch through college and most of our adulthood, but I saw him on his LinkedIn, or I might have seen something on Facebook or whatever, but I knew, I had an idea of what he was doing in his career, and I felt this was somebody that I wanted to get in front of you guys at some point. And then we got together for coffee, I want to say it was a couple months ago, but I think it was actually maybe a year and a half or so ago. Students, as you get older, time flies. It might have been two plus years ago. I'm not sure. You remember when that was?
It was easily 2.
Easily 2. I think you were just getting ready to start your new job. Yeah, okay. So easily 2 years ago, which seems like just recently, we got together for coffee, and as we talked, I said, you know what, we really need to get in front of our students. And here we are 2 plus years later, getting him in front of our students. Matt Dimmick served as the director for Russia and Eastern Europe on the National Security Council staff. He previously served as the Russia director in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Through that, he consulted the president on Russian affairs. He also held positions of senior defense official and defense attaché in Tbilisi?
Tbilisi.
Okay, Georgia. Deputy Foreign Policy Advisor for the Chief of Staff of the Army and Assistant Army Attaché in Moscow. A veteran of the U.S. Army, Matt served as an infantry officer and foreign area officer for 29 years with overseas assignments in Saudi Arabia, Germany, Bosnia, Kosovo, Russia, Iraq, and Georgia. Matt's a graduate of the United States Military Academy, holds a Master's of Arts degree in National Strategy from the Eisenhower School for National Security and Resource Strategy, and a Master of Arts degree in Russian and Eastern European Studies from the University of Kansas. He retired from the Army and joined the nonprofit Spirit of America in 2022 as Regional Program Manager. With that, please welcome Matt Dimmick. Well, thanks for doing this tonight. I'm glad it worked out. So Matt has been traveling, and we're going to get into this later, but Matt has been traveling between here and Ukraine quite a bit. And it just happened that he was in town for a few days. The timing worked out perfectly to get Matt here. So, Matt, we've got a lot to cover, as I told you in an email. So, We do like to start these with what we call pregame batting practice.
All right.
It's a chance for everybody to get to know you better. And you've been listening to the podcast, which means you know some of these. I probably should have switched them up quite a bit, but I might as we go on. We'll see. Question number one, my hero growing up was?
I think George Brett.
George Brett?
Left-handed batter like me, a lot of swagger, best player in baseball, almost hit 400, beat first time since Ted Williams. So he was the guy, and I was following him even when I wasn't living here. I came here during my high school years, but it was nice to. It coincided with the Royals winning the World Series in 1985, and
not a bad time.
So yeah,
not bad. Okay, question number two: if I could have one superpower as a leader, it would be.
I think like Superman had X-ray vision. I think the vision to see farther into the future and see around corners, and that's really one of the whole purpose of having a leader is somebody who can kind of see over the top of things and see what's coming ahead, where the ship is headed, and then can prepare the organization, prepare the team for all of those potential obstacles and opportunities as well. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Question number three, the thing that motivates me to wake up every morning is?
Now I'm involved with this nonprofit, Spirit of America. We do a lot of work in Ukraine, helping the Ukrainians win. We have a lot of high payoff projects, and every day, Ukraine's out of the news now. A lot of people don't think about it. I wake up every morning thinking about what can we do, our organization, with the donations we have, with the resources we have, how we can put those to best use, helping this embattled country regain their sovereignty and beat the Russians.
Okay. Then question number four: if I could meet one person in history, it would be?
Oh, that's so many. Yeah, I would say probably Ulysses S. Grant.
Oh.
So probably one of our finest general officers, as well as commander in chief, and the things he did. Abraham Lincoln gets a lot of credit for keeping the Union together, but he did it on the backs of General Grant, who actually fought the battles, crafted the strategy, the campaigns, and if you want to look for a model of resilience and leadership and just grit and determination, you look no further than General Grant. Lots of obstacles, lots of challenges, but he battled through every one of them.
Very good. This is unique for me because I think this is going to technically be episode 146, 147, something like that of the podcast. Out of those 146, 147, I think there have been two that I've known for a long time. Matt is the third. So I knew you at 17, but tell me about 17-year-old Matt Dimmick.
I wish 17-year-old Matt Dimmick could eat whatever he wanted without gaining an ounce. Could get by on no sleep. Was as fit as Matt Dimmick was ever going to be. So that part of me at 17, I look back on with fond memories. But 17 for me, I've got an August birthday, so 17 was my entire senior year in high school, and then my first couple months at West Point. So I had an arc of on top of the world, as any senior in high school is, with the world out in front of them, with lots of opportunities, lots of things to look forward to. I was probably more cocky than I should have been or deserved to be, but looking back on it, that's probably a good thing. Not having really too many concerns or too many anxieties about where the future went. But that was a great year for me, being at that stage of life with everything out in front of me. Lots of different paths to take, and I had the luck of having good mentors, good family, good situation. Our high school was probably one of the best in the country at the time. Mm-hmm. Lots of good preparation. So I think I was, confident, capable, just ready to take the world by the horns.
So how did you get interested in going to West Point?
Well, I had an uncle who was in the Army, so I heard all his stories from Korean War and beyond. I saw influenced by the culture. So 1980s was kind of, 70s were not a good time for the military or for the Army in particular. The 80s you're seeing a resurgence, and there was a certain cachet to the military at that time. The 80s were very resurgent. So it was, there was, a sense of excellence, a sense of organization that you wanted to be a part of. And I think that appealed to me. I also had seen Top Gun and Hunt for Red October and all the other things where you kind of get the sense that, there's something there in the military. Right. If you want to pursue excellence, you want to be part of an organization that is, just imbued with character and honor, that's the place for you.
We've got 2 seniors here tonight, and I think 6 of our juniors are here. So they're starting to think about college, or maybe a couple of them are filling out the applications and, dreading all that goes into an application. What was it like to get into West Point?
Service academies are somewhat unique when it comes to college applications. In many respects, it's just like applying to any other college with test scores and resumes, applications, and so forth. But with service academies, there's a unique aspect of having to have a congressional nomination to go along with it. So either a congressman or a senator has to pick you and endorse you as one of their picks. So there's an extra wrinkle to it. It's a long process because of course you have to start that application fairly early. Congressional process takes a little while, and then you just sit and wait. And honestly, I was probably not one of their first picks because I did not find out I was going to West Point until about April, I think. Really late in the process. Huh. So, matter of fact, I applied to probably 10 different schools, not really with any process, but just pick this, pick that, whatever catalogs we got at the old college fair. And I didn't get accepted to not a single one. Not a single one. I'm not lying. And my parents were moving off to Phoenix after graduation, so I was like, maybe I'll just knock on the door of Arizona State University and see if they've got late application or something like that. So
not one of them.
I got rejection from the Air Force Academy, rejection from the Naval Academy, really nothing from West Point. And I'm like, okay, well, that's it. But so apparently after they'd gone through their first string, their second string, found out who was coming, who wasn't. They're like, well, who do we have left in the pile? And I think they picked mine up. So it was the only place I got accepted. So I didn't really have much of a choice.
So it's not as difficult to get into West Point, I guess, because that's the only one that took you.
That's right.
I mean,
yeah, they've got low standard.
As you're going through West Point, it's not like, for the most part, you're not planning to go work for Blue Cross and Blue Shield right after school. So what was the process like of getting that first job out of college?
Yeah, so it's guaranteed work. You've got a place to go, but there's a lot of variability in where you can go as a commissioned officer coming out of West Point, or really any of our commissioning sources, ROTC, et cetera. And we have different branches. So aviation, infantry, armor, the works. So there's a selection process in your senior year while you're there to decide what you want to be doing for the rest of your career. So different people have different choices. I picked the infantry, was lucky enough that there were enough slots for me to get my first pick, and then I knew I was going to be going right to a series of preparation assignments and schooling, and then off to first unit to be a second lieutenant and a platoon leader.
So one of your stops was Saudi Arabia, and we were of the age of the first war in Iraq. I mean, it was our junior year maybe of college. Maybe
That's right.
Maybe it was your senior year. Maybe it was my first senior year.
No, it was 1990.
Okay. So was that your first assignment out of college?
No, the first Gulf War was over and done with. My first assignment was with the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, and so I went right there and was platoon leader right off the bat. And we still had operations going on in Saudi Arabia. There were still forces there. We still had responsibilities to the Saudi government, and we had several Patriot units that were protecting Patriots and air defense system, protecting airfields in Dhahran and Riyadh, and they needed an infantry unit to provide local security for those places, and they would pick and choose from a variety of different units. When I was there, our number came up, and the company I was assigned to got that mission. So we shipped off to Saudi Arabia and spent 5 months in the sand watching Patriot batteries.
When did you realize then? Because you're a leader right out of college. 22, 23 years old. You're already leading. At what point did you realize, or did you think, okay, I can do this. I can be a leader?
You're never really comfortable thinking like, hey, I think I know everything there is to know about leading an infantry platoon or leading a company. There's just too many things. As a matter of fact, the more you do it, the more you find out there is so much more to it. And the field opens up and you realize there's so much to learn. So I don't think I was ever really totally confident. Like, hey, I got all of this figured out. I'll just sit back and lead. Just be General Patton up here with all the answers and everything. So it was a constant learning process, and you always find situations that you just can't anticipate. You didn't anticipate, you're always learning something. I learned things when I was a lieutenant. I kept learning things when I was a captain. From the day that I left the U.S. military, I was still learning more things about leadership and how to run organizations.
Okay. So you've served in Saudi Arabia, Germany, Bosnia, Kosovo, Russia, Iraq, and Georgia. We've mentioned that you're kind of a expert, if you will, in Eastern Europe and Russia. At what point did your track start to take you down that path?
Yeah, about the 10-year mark in my career. The first 10 years was very much infantry-heavy assignments that took me to a variety of postings. And then we have kind of a career progression path in the Army. You can choose to do other things after you've successfully commanded a company. You've got options. So as a senior captain and beyond, you can transfer to another type of career field. And at that point in time, what was interesting to me was the international relations field, and there was a path for that called the Foreign Area Officer track that the Army offers. It involves graduate school, language training, in-country training, and then after that, it's just a series of assignments that put all that knowledge and experience to work in jobs that help the U.S. Army and the U.S. military understand that region better from a military perspective.
Out of those places, did you have a area you enjoyed living in?
Yeah, I loved every aspects of every single place that we were in. Okay. I mean, we lived in beautiful places like Garmisch, Germany, and in Tbilisi, Georgia. I mean, and the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains. I mean, beautiful places, beautiful cultures. Fantastic places. We lived in some not so great places. That all goes with it. But Moscow, I guess, is probably the least enjoyable of those assignments. Yeah. But you find your way everywhere you go, and when your family's with you and you've got a unit that has a compelling mission, it really doesn't matter where you happen to be. So you were married and had family at that time? Yes. Our kids. Our oldest daughter is. I keep having birthdays, so I keep forgetting the math, but she's going on 29 this year, and then we've got a 27-year-old and then a 22-year-old, 23. It's hard to do math in public. I apologize, but they were all at that point in time back in the 2000s. They were little girls running around through all the schools. Were they each born in a different place? Were they? It just for some reason that's suddenly fascinating to me. Oh yeah. Our oldest daughter was born at Fort Bragg at the time in North Carolina, and our middle daughter was born in Landstuhl in Germany, and then our youngest was in Colorado Springs. Very good. We ask this question every episode of this podcast: are leaders born or made? A little bit of both, I think. I mean, everybody's innately born with abilities to figure out how to get along with other people and how to organize themselves to get things done. I mean, everybody's got those innate abilities, but they have to be cultivated and they have to be practiced, and they have to have there's got to be opportunities for those characteristics to be expressed. So I'm a perfect example of a leader being made because I don't think I came into the military or came to West Point with really any idea of what being a leader meant or how to be an effective leader. But when you get the opportunities to work on it, you get opportunities to practice it, and you get some training, and you get good leaders that you can see them doing leadership in action. Then I think all that goes into the process of forming great leaders.
So as these students are sitting here, and some of them might be thinking, I don't really have any leadership qualities. I don't even know what I'm doing here, those types of things. 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, what would you tell them?
Put yourself out there. Find those opportunities to go out there and put yourself in those situations. And have high standards for yourself, and then hold yourself to them. And find those opportunities where you can go out and do something that makes a difference, that involves getting other people to follow along with you. And find that compelling mission. Find what it is that you think needs to be done. And if you can tap into that, you'll find the people that want to follow you into whatever you're trying to accomplish. So, but you got to take that first step.
You mentioned mentors a little bit ago. How have mentors helped shape you?
For one, demonstrating good leadership. I mean, I've had so many opportunities throughout my time in the military to see good leadership in action. Mm-hmm. I mean, the flip side of that is lots of opportunities to see bad leadership in action. Yeah. So you learn just as much from seeing what you don't want to be as much as you see what you want to emulate. So I've had the great pleasure to work with a lot of fantastic leaders, non-commissioned officers, senior officers who demonstrate good leadership every day under tough circumstances, and they show you know that decisions aren't easy, because a lot of times the decisions that a leader has to make, it's always a battle between sometimes the worst decision you can make, and that requires a lot of character and a lot of fortitude to be able to to tell the team you're leading, this is not a great way we're headed, but it's the best of the worst that we can do. And pulling people through that set of circumstances and getting to the other side really requires a lot of character and a lot of strong leadership. And I saw that throughout my entire time in the military, because there's so many situations where it's tough, requires sacrifice, requires in many cases the threat of being injured, killed. And to have leaders with the vision to say, this is what has to be done. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. That's going to get everybody across that line as safely as possible. I was able to witness that throughout my entire career, and it leaves an impression on you.
Mm-hmm. This is J.R. Buckner, President and CEO of First Federal Bank of Kansas City. We hope you're enjoying this week's conversation. For this week's Student Spotlight, I'd like you to meet one of the students in our C10 Mentoring and Leadership program.
Hi, my name is Don Carlos Alvarez. I go to Bishop Miege High School, and C10 is making an impact on my life by helping me with my personal growth and helping me become a better person.
First Federal Bank of Kansas City is proud to make a donation this week to the Post-High School Scholarship Fund for seniors in the C10 Mentoring and Leadership program. If you'd like to join us in this effort to give our future leaders an opportunity after high school, please click on the link in the show's notes. Now back to this week's conversation.
So toward the end of your career, you end up in Washington, D.C. You spent some time with the National Security Council. You spent some time in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. How did those assignments come to be, and what were you doing in each of those?
Sure. So, my area of expertise is Russia, Eastern Europe, and as you kind of progress up the ranks, you get a variety of experience in, working those areas. So I had been in Russia, a part of the embassy there as one of the military attaches. I've been in Georgia as a senior defense official. And one of the assignments that was open at the time that I was coming out of Georgia was to work on the Secretary of Defense's staff as the Russia director. So my skill set happened to match what was needed for that particular job, and so I had the good fortune to be able to go to work there. Spent 3 years working there under a variety of Secretaries of Defense, including Secretary Mattis, as I wrapped up. And we just work Russia issues, and there's plenty of Russia issues when it comes to our Department of Defense trying to figure out what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what we're going to do to keep them from harming our country and our interests across the world. And then that was really kind of the stepping stone to the White House. Was the National Security Council staff has several dozen directors, across covering regional responsibilities and functional responsibilities across the world. There was an opening for the Russia director about the same time that I was coming out of the White House, and the Dr. Fiona Hill, who was the senior director for Russia at the time, I had worked with as part of the interagency team in my work at the White House, or work at the Pentagon. And as she was looking for directors, she asked if I was interested in coming to the White House. I like, well, sure, of course. And then I started there under, at the time, the Trump administration. Spent, I think, 17 months of time under the Trump regime, and then 3 months in the Biden presidency. Okay. And then that coincided with my retirement.
So, with all the history there, I'm fascinated by just working in the White House, quote unquote. What was that like for you?
So I was the Russia director on the National Security Council staff, and our president at the time had one very distinct idea about how the U.S. should be interacting with Russia, and a different perception of what our national security interests were vis-a-vis Russia. That particular perspective was 180 degrees out from, frankly, the rest of the government and Congress. So trying to square all of those differing policy angles was constantly a challenge, because President Trump had certain ideas about how friendly to be with Vladimir Putin. Congress had slapped lots of sanctions and restrictions and handcuffs on what the president could do, and lots of friction. So yeah, my time at the White House was very much I've had combat tours. But the White House is a combat tour in and of itself, totally distinct and different, and just as dangerous to your professional livelihood. So yeah, it was like a high wire act, in a windstorm, blindfolded, and you just hope you could get to the other side without losing your balance and tipping over.
You've advised at least one president. Was it both of them, or just?
Yeah, I was there. My last 3 months there coincided with the 100-day sprint of the Biden administration.
In that situation, are you talking to them directly and trying to advise them directly? Or is it going through somebody else? I mean, how's that work?
Yeah, as my job was a director, so there's a couple layers of bureaucracy between directors and the president. You've got senior directors, national security advisor, and then, of course, the national security advisor is the primary conduit for national security discussions with the president. And then below that, senior directors have a lot of time in the Oval Office describing what the policies are, talking points, that type of thing. But down in the trenches, where I was as a director, we do a lot of writing, a lot of coalescing of different policy points from across the interagency, and do a lot of the work preparing the material, meshing all the things that Department of State, Department of Treasury, Department of Defense, all those disparate aspects of the government that touch national security interests, especially for your region like Russia, and just trying to fuse all that together to keep all the horses headed the same direction. So it was mostly a lot of writing, a lot of reading emails, a lot of reading the daily intelligence that comes through, and just trying to make sense of it all.
So you retired in 21 then?
Yeah.
2021? Mm-hmm. Especially based on what you were just talking about, have you missed that quote unquote lifestyle at all?
Well, most of the work that I could do would be in D.C., for my particular skill set. So that's probably where I should have stayed. But when I retired, the very day I got we have DD-214 as our retirement paperwork. The very day I had that in my hands, Washington D.C. was in the rearview mirror. So I had no interest in staying there, and we came right back here to home. Figure out what to do next after that. So no, I don't miss D.C. The politics of it, the rat race of it. It's an entire industry of government, military. Policy. It's very, for some people, it's great. For me, I don't miss it for a second.
So it very much is its own animal, DC.
Yeah, you've got it's the nexus of power, and you have, and a lot of people are attracted to that for selfish reasons. Fortunately, there's still, I think, a critical mass of people who are there because they want to do the right thing. But collectively, when you put all of that together, you have a hard time. All the gears don't mesh very smoothly. I think we're seeing that today. Larger than ever. So it's a town of so many different competing interests, so many food fights over resources and budgets and different institutional responsibilities. So it's very sloppy and very messy. But democracy is not easy. So it's a messy experiment that we've got going here, and they are fighting those battles out in Washington D.C. and those corridors of power every single day.
Is there a realistic White House show that you've seen?
No, they all get it. They all get it wrong. I think every depiction I've seen, it's either the Situation Room with some kind of space age TVs with peering into through satellite imagery down to somebody's house, or it's snappy commentary of people running from room to room making bold policy decisions. It's so much more mundane than that. It's if you watch me at the White House, you would see me reading emails, typing talking points, running papers from one office to another to get policy judgments, working with interagency colleagues over food fights that have been going on for years, and then writing up talking points that the president sticks in his pocket and then freelances on his own. So no, I've never seen a White House depiction comes anywhere close to the run-of-the-mill office drudgery that was my experience.
Nice. All right. So you're now with Spirit of America, and you mentioned that earlier, but what exactly is Spirit of America? What do you guys do?
So Spirit of America is a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded about 20 years ago with the intent of helping our troops and diplomats with problems that you just have out in the field, resource issues, or the ability to get certain things in hand in a timely manner that help do the mission. So it started out helping troops in Afghanistan with certain things that made their lives easier with local communities, and it has since grown so that now we're really focused on one, helping Ukraine beat back Russia because it's in our U.S. national interest to do so. We're also helping the Taiwanese civil society with some of their issues to strengthen resiliency, and then we're also active in the Middle East and several other places. So our goal is work alongside our troops and diplomats to help secure help them do their job better to help secure America's national interests. And we do that in a variety of ways. In Ukraine particularly, we've had the luxury of donors contributing about $60 million at this point, and we've converted those into several high payoff lines of effort and programs specifically targeted to help the Ukrainian military.
So what are things like over there right now? And you're over there pretty regularly.
Yeah, usually they're about every other month or so. So we've seen this war progress from the dark days of the early months of the invasion, when Russia was knocking on the doorsteps of Kiev and looking to topple the government, to the Ukrainians pushing them back out again, and then kind of settling into a long slog in late last year, and then a counteroffensive this year that had promise, but was under-resourced and resulted in somewhat of a stalemate, so to speak, where the lines are fairly static and there's a lot of heavy fighting resulting in not a lot of ground being traded one way or the other. So at this point now, the Ukrainians are back into a defensive crouch on an active defense, absorbing a lot of the Russian human wave assaults, for lack of a better word, that are impaling themselves on Ukrainian lines. And there is still, despite not being in the news, there is heavy fighting every day on the front lines. And the Russians are sensing opportunity and trying to push their advantage in a variety of places. And there are just hundreds of casualties every single day. Majority on the Russian side, because they're very careless with how they conduct their operations, but they're still taking a toll on Ukrainian forces. So at this point, the Ukrainians are actually having to ration ammunition. Air defense missiles are starting to run dry. They're awaiting further resources from the West, from Europeans, from the United States. United States support has run dry while we await another tranche of funding. So this is a delicate time for the Ukrainians, where they are holding on by their fingernails to keep what they have, and hoping that more reserves and more resources come their way so that they can finally do enough damage to the Russians that they can either take back territory or force the Russians back.
The students are going to have some questions for you here in just a second. I've got a couple more, though. And I thank you for serving. And when I say this, and I think I've told Alan this too, as I thank you for it, I say you have done something that I didn't have the courage to do. So maybe that's why I thought that as we go through courage this month, maybe that's why I equated it with you so much. But in our Sea of the Major Leagues vernacular, a leader with courage wants the opportunity to decide the outcome and isn't afraid to fail. What does courage in leadership look like to you?
So, leaders are in that precarious position where they are forced to make decisions, and they're forced to make decisions without all the information on hand. And that is that can be, a scary proposition. It's always scary making decisions without all the information on hand. But you're never going to have the information. Sometimes a decision now with partial information is infinitely better than a much more thoroughly researched decision that takes place way too late. So there's that constant battle of, do you take action now with what you have, or do you wait to find out more where you could make a better decision down the road? Leaders are constantly having to weigh that. So having the courage to decide, I've got to go now with what I have. I'm going to make the best decision with the information that I have, and then we're going to move out without looking back, second guessing, Monday morning quarterbacking, and then you got to convince your team of that as well, because they know that. Hey, that doesn't sound very smart, boss. Maybe we should wait until we find out something else. Like, well, I think the same thing, but we don't have that kind of time. So let's move out. And but convincing the team of that, and convincing yourself of that you're making the best decision with what you have, and then dealing with the consequences as they come. I think that is, that's one of the central pieces of courage and leadership.
Hey, it's Matt back here in the Sea of the Major League shed. As I mentioned in the introduction, although we took out the majority of the Q&A with Matt Dimmick and our students and mentors, there was one question and answer that was especially good. Mentor Stan Tate asked Matt Dimmick essentially to help the students distinguish between good leaders and bad leaders, considering Matt has been around quite a few of both during his career. Here's what Matt said.
Good leadership is very easy to identify, and sometimes bad leaders can disguise themselves as good leaders because they look the part, or they act the part, or they say the right things. But the primary flaw in most bad leaders that I've seen is when it comes down to it, they are in their leadership position to serve themselves and to push themselves forward. And sometimes that looks like good leadership because they are pushing their team as hard as they possibly can to produce results that make them look good. Bad leaders can disguise themselves as high-performing individuals who are driving high-performing teams, when in effect, some of them are absolutely toxic and are eroding the team. They're riding a team to exhaustion, reaping the benefits of the output, but morale, mood, attitude within that team is absolutely rock bottom. And unfortunately, in organizations, meritocracies, results-oriented organizations, sometimes the bad leaders who are getting good results get picked to be promoted to further positions, and they get moved up on the backs of their toxic leadership, and it sometimes never gets exposed. But every organization they touch is poisoned by the fact that they are driving their organizations into the ground without thinking about the needs of the organization or making that organization healthy throughout all of its parts. And then get away with it for a period of time. And in organizations like the military, where you might be a commander for a couple years, you can ride that organization for a couple years and squeeze every bit of output out of it, ruin everybody's lives, make everybody miserable, and it'll look sparkling from outside because you're getting all these results, but inside, the unit is absolutely crushed.
I asked you earlier about 17-year-old Matt Dimmick. If you could go back today, what would you tell him?
I'd say, well, one, there's a lot of opportunity ahead. So, dig in and take advantage of it. But I'd also say, hold yourself to a high standard, and then, and hold yourself accountable to it. There's plenty of times that 18-year-old me or 19-year-old me was kind of just, going along with the flow, expecting to be mediocre, or just doing mediocre things when, there was so much potential there. And I could have probably done so much more or gotten more done, or produced, more value for the folks around me if I had a little bit more sense of, you could do much more, you could do better, and you should do better. So I would say, don't be afraid to think bigger, work harder, and hold yourself more accountable, because you're capable of doing much more than you think you can.
Okay, very good. Let's thank Matt Dimmick. Well, that does it for this episode of the C10 Mentoring and Leadership Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, we hope that you'll leave a favorable review on your favorite podcast platform. If you didn't enjoy it, or you have other comments or suggestions for potential guests, you can click on the comment link in the show's notes. We drop a new episode at the end of every week, but be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an interview. And if you or your company would like to help underwrite this podcast, let me know. Until next time, this is Matt Folks for the See You in the Major Leagues Foundation saying be safe and take care.